She hugged a screaming alien child in the market, not knowing she just calmed the Emperor's heir. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The central marketplace of Vexoria buzzed with activity under the planet's twin suns. Among the throngs of various alien species, Lauren Bennett stood out with her copper hair and distinctly human features, a diplomatic translator simply trying to navigate the chaotic alien bazaar. The Galactic Union had only recently discovered Earth 5 years ago. Humans were still newcomers to the interstellar community, with only a handful of diplomatic missions established throughout known space. Lauren had volunteered immediately when the opportunity arose to serve as a cultural liaison on Vexoria, the central hub of the Zentari Empire. The Zentari were an enigmatic species, tall and slender with iridescent blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. They had 4 arms and elongated faces with large, almond-shaped eyes that changed color with their moods. Their society was highly stratified and formal, with complex social protocols that Lauren was still learning to navigate after 6 months on their homeworld. Today was her first free day in weeks, and she had decided to explore the famous market district of the capital city. The diplomatic compound where she lived and worked was comfortable but sterile. Here in the market, life pulsed with vibrant energy, vendors calling out their wares in a dozen different languages, the mingling sense of alien spices and foods, and the cacophony of bartering in full swing. 7 credits for this? That's highway robbery, Lauren said to a 6-armed vendor selling what appeared to be crystalline fruit. She was proud of herself for remembering the local bargaining customs. The vendor's upper appendages wiggled in what Lauren recognized as amusement. For you, human diplomat, 6 credits. My final offer. Lauren smiled and handed over the credits, placing the sparkling fruit in her bag. She was becoming more comfortable in this alien world each day. That's when she heard it, a high-pitched, keening wail that cut through the market's bustling noise. The sound was so raw with distress that Lauren turned immediately, seeking its source. Several beings around her continued their shopping, though a few Zentari nearby had gone completely still, their eyes shifting to a deep purple, a color Lauren had never seen in their kind before. The screaming continued, and Lauren pushed through the crowd toward the sound. In a small clearing between vendor stalls, she found the source, a Zentari child, smaller than any she had seen before, perhaps the equivalent of a human 4-year-old. The child had collapsed to the ground, all 4 arms wrapped tightly around its body, rocking back and forth as it released that heart-wrenching cry. Lauren looked around, expecting to see a Zentari adult rushing to help, but strangely, all nearby Zentari were backing away, their eyes that unusual deep purple. Some were actually bowing their heads and averting their gaze. Is anyone going to help? Lauren called out, but received no response. The child continued to wail, the sound becoming more desperate. Something was wrong here. The behavior of the adults made no sense. But the child's distress was unmistakable, and Lauren couldn't stand by and watch any longer. Her training on Zentari customs was extensive, but nothing in the diplomatic briefings had covered this situation. She approached slowly and knelt beside the child. "Hey there," she said softly, using the Zentari language. "Are you lost? Can I help you find your family?" The child's wailing only intensified, its small body shaking violently now. Lauren noticed a small wound on one of the child's lower arms. Nothing serious, but probably painful. Perhaps they had fallen and gotten separated from their caregiver in the busy market. Lauren did what came naturally to her. She reached out and gently gathered the small Zentari into her arms, pulling them against her chest in a gentle hug. The child stiffened momentarily, then gradually relaxed as Lauren began to rock slightly, humming a soft tune her mother had once sung to her. "It's okay," she murmured. "You're safe. We'll find whoever you're with." Gradually, the wailing subsided to hiccuping sobs, then to silence. The child's eyes, which had been squeezed shut, opened to reveal irises of the most brilliant gold Lauren had ever seen. That's when Lauren became aware of the absolute silence that had fallen over the marketplace. She looked up to find every Zentari in sight prostrated on the ground, their foreheads touching the pavement. Even the non-Zentari aliens had stopped and were staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to horror. "What's happening?" Lauren asked, still cradling the now calm child. "Does someone know this child's family?" A voice spoke from behind her, deep and resonant. "That will not be necessary, human diplomat." Lauren turned to see a group of Zentari in elaborate ceremonial armor, their weapons trained directly at her. Their leader stepped forward, his eyes a stormy gray. "Release the Imperial heir immediately," he commanded, "and perhaps your death will be quick." Lauren felt the blood drain from her face as the child in her arms shifted to look at the guards, then reached up with one small hand to touch her cheek with surprising gentleness. "Imperial heir," she whispered, the realization crashing over her. This wasn't just any child, this was royalty. And she had just violated what was clearly a serious cultural taboo by touching them. The child spoke for the first time, its voice musical and surprisingly mature sounding. "She helped me, Sentinel Vran. She is kind." The guard's eyes narrowed, but he lowered his weapon slightly. "The heir speaks in your favor, human. But the Emperor must be informed of this incident. You will come with us now." Lauren carefully set the child down, and immediately several attendants rushed forward, bowing deeply before approaching the young royal. The child kept watching Lauren even as they were surrounded by their entourage. "I meant no disrespect," Lauren said, addressing the guard captain. The heir was in distress. "I only wanted to help. Your intentions are irrelevant," the captain replied coldly. "No being has touched the Imperial heir with bare hands in 5 centuries. The penalty is death." Lauren felt her heart rate spike. This was beyond any cultural misunderstanding she had been trained for. "I invoke diplomatic protection under Galactic Union statute," she said, falling back on her training. "I request immediate contact with the Earth Embassy." The captain made a gesture that Lauren couldn't interpret. "Your diplomatic status is noted. It changes nothing. The Emperor will decide your fate." As the guards surrounded her, Lauren took one last look at the marketplace. The vendors and shoppers were returning to their activities, though many cast furtive glances her way. The small Zentari child, the Imperial heir, was being escorted in the opposite direction, but turned to look back at her, those golden eyes unreadable. What had she done? The Imperial Palace of Vexoria was unlike anything Lauren had ever seen. Towering spires of crystal and a material resembling mother-of-pearl rose hundreds of meters into the sky, reflecting the light of the setting suns in dazzling patterns. Under different circumstances, Lauren would have been awestruck. Instead, she was being marched through its cavernous corridors as a prisoner. The guard captain, Sentinel Vran, led the procession with 4 armed guards flanking Lauren. They passed countless Zentari officials and servants, all of whom stopped and pressed themselves against the walls, eyes downcast, as the group passed. "I still don't understand what I've done," Lauren tried again. In human culture, comforting a distressed child is natural, expected even. "You have much to learn about our ways, human," Vran replied without turning. "The Imperial bloodline is sacred. Their physical form must never be touched by common beings. Their essence is divine." But the child was hurt and crying, Lauren protested. Why wasn't anyone helping them? The heir was experiencing the sacred tempering, a ritual of growth. The pain is necessary. The cries are part of the process. No one intervenes because no one must intervene. Lauren felt sick. "You let children suffer as a ritual?" Vran finally turned to look at her, his eyes now a deep blue. "Judge not what you do not understand, human. The tempering has been our way for millennia. It teaches control, strength, endurance, qualities essential for one who will rule the largest empire in the galaxy." They had reached an enormous set of doors inlaid with what appeared to be constellations mapped in precious gems. 2 guards stood at attention outside, their armor more elaborate than any Lauren had seen so far. "The Emperor awaits," Vran announced. Prepare yourself, human. Few outsiders ever stand in the imperial presence. Fewer still survive the experience. The doors swung open silently, revealing a vast circular chamber. The ceiling opened to the night sky, where Vexoria's 3 moons hung like jewels among the stars. The floor appeared to be a single piece of polished black stone that reflected the starlight like still water. At the center of the chamber stood a raised dais with a structure that wasn't quite a throne, more like a crystalline formation that had grown naturally from the floor. Upon it sat the Emperor of the Zentari. Lauren had seen images of Emperor Zeth during her briefings, but they hadn't captured his true presence. He was taller than any Zentari she had seen, his skin a deeper blue with patterns that seemed to shift and flow like currents in water. His forearms were adorned with intricate markings that Lauren guessed were some form of ceremonial tattoos. But it was his eyes that held her attention, pure gold, identical to the child's, but with an intensity that seemed to pierce through her. Beside the Emperor stood several advisors, their elaborate robes marking their high status. And there, partially hidden behind the Emperor's crystalline seat, was the small figure of the child from the market. Vran led Lauren to a position about 10 meters from the dais, then dropped to one knee, his head bowed. Imperial Majesty, I present the human diplomat who violated the sacred space of the heir apparent. Lauren remained standing, remembering her diplomatic training. Bowing to foreign leaders was acceptable, but kneeling could be interpreted as Earth submitting to Zentari authority, something she wasn't empowered to do. The Emperor studied her for a long moment before speaking. When he did, his voice was surprisingly gentle, though it carried throughout the chamber. You are called Lauren Bennett, he said, not a question but a statement. You serve as cultural liaison for the newly discovered human world. Lauren inclined her head respectfully. Yes, Your Imperial Majesty. I've been stationed on Vexoria for 6 months. And in that time, did you not learn our most sacred laws? Was the inviolability of the imperial bloodline not made clear to you? Lauren chose her words carefully. With respect, Your Majesty, my training covered many aspects of Zentari culture, but the specific protocols regarding the imperial family were not detailed. I was told the imperial household was cloistered and that interaction was unlikely. One of the advisors stepped forward, his eyes a nervous yellow. Imperial Majesty, this is my failing. We did not anticipate a direct encounter between a human diplomat and the heir. The market district was supposed to be cleared for the heir's tempering ritual. The Emperor's upper right hand made a dismissive gesture, and the advisor stepped back, head bowed. The circumstances are unusual, the Emperor acknowledged. But the fact remains, you laid hands upon my child, the future ruler of the Zentari. By our most ancient laws, this act demands your life. Lauren felt her throat go dry but forced herself to maintain eye contact. I acted out of compassion, Your Majesty. In human culture, we do not allow children to suffer if we can help it, regardless of their status. A murmur ran through the assembled advisors at her directness. Compassion, the Emperor repeated, as though testing the word. An interesting concept. Tell me, human, do you have offspring of your own? No, Your Majesty. Yet you responded to my child's distress as though they were your own. Explain this behavior. Lauren wasn't sure how to articulate something so fundamental to human nature. Humans have an instinct to protect children, all children. We're hardwired to respond to a child in distress. I couldn't simply walk past when I heard crying and saw that your child was hurt. The Emperor was silent for a moment. Then, to Lauren's surprise, he beckoned to the child, who stepped forward to stand beside him. The Emperor leaned down, and the child whispered something in his ear. My heir has something to say regarding this matter, the Emperor announced. The court will hear the words of the future Emperor. The child stepped forward, golden eyes fixed on Lauren. When they spoke, the same surprisingly mature voice Lauren had heard in the marketplace filled the chamber. This human held me when I was in pain. Her touch was gentle, and she made sounds that calmed my distress. She did not know who I was, yet she offered comfort freely. I have never experienced such a thing before. The child turned to the Emperor. Father, I wish to learn more of this human concept of compassion. It feels important. The Emperor's eyes shifted, cycling through several colors before returning to gold. He studied Lauren with new intensity. My advisors tell me that humans are a primitive species, he said. Barely space-capable, technologically inferior, politically fragmented. Yet here you stand, having done what no being has dared in centuries, touching the imperial air and living to speak of it. He rose from his seat, towering over Lauren. The ancient laws are clear on this matter, but the laws also grant the Emperor discretion in unusual circumstances. He glanced at his child, then back to Lauren. And these circumstances are certainly unprecedented. Lauren held her breath. Lauren Bennett of Earth, I offer you a choice, the Emperor said. Death, as our laws demand, or service? Service, Your Majesty? My heir has expressed interest in your human concept of compassion. This is the first time the heir has shown interest in any outsider culture. As Emperor, I must consider what is best for the future of our empire. He descended from the dais, approaching Lauren directly, an action that caused the advisors to gasp and the guards to tense. You will serve as special cultural attaché to the imperial heir, the Emperor continued. You will teach my child about human ways, about this compassion and other concepts your species values. In return, your life is spared. Lauren blinked in surprise. This was the last thing she had expected. I would be honored, Your Majesty, but I should consult with my superiors at the Earth Embassy. This is not a negotiation, human, the Emperor interrupted. Your diplomatic posting is ended. You now serve the imperial household directly. The decision must be made now, service or death. Lauren looked at the child, who was watching her with those intelligent golden eyes. Something about the young Zentari's expression, curiosity mixed with hope, made the decision clear. I accept the position, Your Majesty. The Emperor nodded once. It is decided. From this day forward, you are bound to the imperial household. Sentinel Vran will escort you to your new quarters and explain your duties. He turned away, then paused. One more thing, human. Yes, Your Majesty. My heir has never been embraced before today. In our culture, physical contact is reserved for the most intimate of relations. Yet you, a stranger, offered this intimacy freely to a child in pain. His eyes shifted to a color Lauren hadn't seen before, a soft lavender. Perhaps there is something to learn from humans after all. As Lauren was led from the imperial chamber, the child, her new charge, watched her go with unblinking golden eyes. Lauren had no idea what she had just committed herself to, but one thing was certain. Her life on Vexoria had just become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more important. The following weeks were a crash course in imperial protocol for Lauren. Her new quarters were luxurious beyond anything she had experienced. A suite of rooms in the palace's eastern wing with views of the capital city and the mountains beyond. But they were also, she quickly realized, a gilded cage. Sentinel Vran had been assigned as her permanent escort, and he made it clear that her movements were restricted. She was no longer permitted to leave the palace without explicit permission, and all communication with the Earth Embassy had been severed. You serve the Empire now, Vran had explained dispassionately. Your former allegiances are irrelevant. Her daily routine quickly took shape. Each morning, she was escorted to a private garden where she would meet with the imperial heir for several hours. These sessions were ostensibly for teaching human customs and concepts, but Lauren quickly realized they were being carefully monitored. At least 3 royal advisors were always present, taking notes on everything she said and did. She still didn't know the heir's name, or even their gender, as Zentari gender concepts didn't translate neatly to human understanding. The child was simply referred to as the imperial heir by everyone, including their own father. Do you have a name I could call you? Lauren asked during their 3rd session together. They were sitting in the garden beside a pool filled with creatures that resembled luminescent koi fish. The heir tilted their head, those golden eyes curious. I am the imperial heir. Yes, but is there a personal name your family uses? Something just for you, not your title? The child considered this. The Emperor calls me heir. The royal household calls me young majesty. Lauren frowned. That's still a title. Don't you have a name that's just yours? Names are for common people. One of the watching advisors interjected sharply. The imperial bloodline transcends such mundane designations. Lauren bit back a retort. She was learning to pick her battles. Despite the restrictions and constant surveillance, Lauren found herself growing fond of the young heir. The child was incredibly intelligent, asking insightful questions about Earth, human customs, and especially human emotions. Explain again this concept of empathy, the heir requested one day as they watched the palace gardeners tending to exotic plants. Empathy is when you understand and share the feelings of another person, Lauren explained. It's putting yourself in someone else's position and imagining how they feel. The heir's eyes shifted to a thoughtful blue-green. And this is different from sympathy? Yes. Sympathy is feeling sorry for someone's situation. Empathy is actually sharing their emotional experience, feeling with them, not just for them. And all humans possess this ability? Lauren smiled. To varying degrees, yes. It's part of what connects us to each other. The heir was silent for a moment. The day in the market, you felt my pain? I felt your distress, Lauren corrected gently. I couldn't know exactly what you were experiencing, but I could see you were suffering, and that made me want to help. Even though I was a stranger? Even though I am not human? Yes, Lauren said simply. The heir seemed to ponder this deeply. In Zentari culture, suffering is private. It is considered weak to show pain or distress. The tempering rituals teach us to contain our emotions, to never burden others with our weakness. Lauren chose her next words carefully, aware of the advisors watching closely. Different cultures have different approaches to emotions. Humans generally believe that sharing emotional burdens makes them lighter, not heavier. Fascinating, the heir murmured. And the physical contact, the hug as you call it, this is a common response to distress? Very common, especially with children. Physical touch releases chemicals in our brains that reduce stress and create feelings of safety and connection. The heir's eyes widened slightly. Your bodies change chemically when you touch? Lauren nodded. Oxytocin, endorphins, serotonin. These are chemicals our bodies produce during positive physical contact. They're important for human development and well-being. One of the advisors stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Young Majesty, perhaps we should proceed to the scheduled lesson on Earth governance systems. But the heir raised a hand in a gesture that, despite their small size, carried unmistakable authority. I wish to continue this discussion on human physical contact and emotional development. The advisor bowed deeply and stepped back, but Lauren could feel the disapproval radiating from them. As the weeks passed, Lauren noticed subtle changes in the air. The child seemed more expressive, their eyes changing colors more frequently and vividly. They had begun to use gestures when speaking, something Lauren realized was a human habit the heir was adopting. And most significantly, they had started asking questions about their own society that bordered on critical. Why must the tempering be painful? The heir asked one afternoon. If humans learn control and leadership without such rituals, why can't Zentari? It was exactly the sort of question that made the advisors nervous. Lauren had learned to redirect these conversations when the advisors grew too anxious, but she also made sure to plant seeds of thought that the heir could consider privately. Different paths can lead to the same destination, she offered diplomatically. Human history has its own share of harsh traditions that we've moved beyond as we've evolved. The heir nodded thoughtfully. Evolution of culture. This is a concept we have not discussed before. One evening, after nearly a month of this new arrangement, Lauren was surprised by a visit from Sentinel ran outside of their usual schedule. The Emperor requests your presence, he announced, his expression unreadable. Lauren felt a flicker of apprehension. She had only seen Emperor Zeth once since that first night, during a formal palace ceremony where she had stood far in the background. Had she overstepped? Had the advisors reported concerns about her influence on the heir? Vran led her through corridors she hadn't seen before, deeper into the palace complex. They arrived at a smaller, less formal chamber than the grand audience hall where she had first met the emperor. This room was circular with a domed ceiling painted to resemble the night sky, complete with twinkling lights that must have been some form of advanced technology. The emperor was alone, standing by a large window that overlooked the capital city. He turned as Lauren entered, dismissing Vran with a subtle gesture. "Lauren Bennett." He greeted her, his golden eyes reflecting the city lights. "I trust your accommodations have been satisfactory?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Thank you." The emperor motioned for her to join him by the window. "My advisors have been providing detailed reports of your sessions with the heir." Lauren swallowed nervously. "I hope they've been satisfactory as well." "They have been illuminating." The emperor studied her face. "You are having a profound effect on my child, human. I've only been sharing aspects of human culture, as requested," Lauren said carefully. "Indeed. And in doing so, you have caused the heir to question Zentari traditions that have stood for thousands of years." Lauren tensed, preparing for the worst, but the emperor's next words surprised her. "This is precisely what I had hoped would happen, Your Majesty." The emperor's eyes shifted to that unusual lavender shade she had seen only once before. The Zentari Empire spans 12 systems and governs 27 sentient species. For millennia, we have ruled through tradition, ritual, and the mythic distance we maintain from our subjects. It has been effective, but increasingly, I question whether it will remain so. He gestured toward the sprawling city below. "The galaxy is changing, Lauren Bennett. New species like yours are joining the interstellar community. Ancient powers are forming new alliances. What served the Empire in the past may not serve it in the future." Lauren listened, astonished by this unexpected confidence. "The heir must be prepared for a different galaxy than the one I inherited," the Emperor continued. "One where perhaps compassion and connection may prove as valuable as distance and authority." Understanding dawned on Lauren. "You orchestrated our meeting in the market." The Emperor's upper hands made a gesture she couldn't interpret. "Not precisely. The tempering ritual was genuine, as was the heir's distress. But I had been informed of your regular visits to the market district. The timing of the heir's ritual in that location was not entirely coincidental. You wanted me to interact with your child," Lauren realized. "But why not simply request a human cultural advisor formally?" "Politics," the Emperor said simply. "The imperial court is bound by layers of tradition and faction. Had I formally requested a human to teach the heir, there would have been resistance, sabotage, perhaps even danger to you or the heir. This way, what appeared to be a chance encounter and my subsequent mercy in sparing your life could not be challenged." Lauren was beginning to understand the complex game the Emperor was playing. "The advisors who watch our sessions report to various court factions, yes. They believe they are monitoring you for dangerous influence. In reality, they are witnessing exactly what I wish them to see: the gradual, concerning expansion of the heir's worldview." "A worldview you want expanded," Lauren concluded. The Emperor inclined his head slightly. "The Zentari have ruled through fear and awe for too long. We have become isolated, resistant to change. But the galaxy will not wait for us to evolve at our preferred pace." He turned fully to face Lauren. "I did not anticipate the hug, however. That was unexpected." Lauren felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. "I apologize for overstepping. Do not apologize for the very action that confirmed my choice," the Emperor interrupted. "In that moment of genuine compassion, you demonstrated exactly why human perspective is valuable to the heir's development." He moved away from the window, gesturing for Lauren to follow. "I have decided to expand your role. You will no longer be merely a cultural instructor, but will serve as the heir's personal guardian and advisor. You will have greater freedom within the palace and will accompany the heir to certain state functions." Lauren was speechless for a moment. "I'm honored, Your Majesty, but won't this cause more resistance from the court?" "Undoubtedly," the Emperor said, with what Lauren could have sworn was a hint of amusement. "But opposition can be instructive. The heir will observe how you navigate it." learning yet another human skill, resilience in the face of adversity. As they reached the chamber door, the Emperor paused. "One more thing, Lauren Bennett." "Yes, Your Majesty." "The heir has requested a name. A personal name, not a title." His golden eyes studied her reaction. "This is unprecedented in our history. The imperial bloodline has not used personal names for over 2,000 years. Lauren wasn't sure how to respond. "What did you tell them?" "I told them that perhaps it was time for a new tradition." The Emperor's eyes shifted through several colors before settling on that unusual lavender again. "The heir has chosen the name Lori. They say it sounds similar to your name, while being distinct." Lauren felt a swell of emotion. I'm honored, as you should be. No being has influenced an imperial heir this significantly in living memory." The Emperor's expression became serious again. "Remember, Lauren Bennett, with such influence comes great responsibility. The future of the Empire may well be shaped by what you teach my child in the coming months." As Sentinel Vran returned to escort her back to her quarters, Lauren felt the weight of the Emperor's words. What had begun as a simple act of compassion in a marketplace had somehow placed her at the center of an imperial transformation. The implications were staggering and a little terrifying. But as she thought of the young heir, of Lori, and their curious, intelligent eyes and increasingly expressive demeanor, Lauren felt something else too: hope. Perhaps this strange twist of fate was an opportunity not just for the Zentari, but for all species in this vast, complex galaxy, including humanity. 3 months into her role as the heir's guardian, Lauren found herself in the midst of a transformation that extended far beyond her initial expectations. The palace itself seemed different now, less forbidding, more alive with possibility. Or perhaps it was Lauren who had changed, growing accustomed to the once alien environment that was now her home. Lori, as the young heir now privately called themselves, was flourishing under Lauren's guidance. The child's natural intelligence, combined with an insatiable curiosity about human ways, had created a unique bond between them. Despite the ever-present advisors and the watchful eyes of the court, Lauren and Lori had developed their own subtle language of gestures and expressions that allowed for private communication even in crowded rooms. "Today we will attend the delegation of the 3 moons," Vran informed Lauren one morning as she prepared for her daily session with Lori. "The heir will be formally presented to the ambassadors of our tributary worlds." Lauren nodded, having been briefed on this important ceremony days earlier. "Will I be required to speak?" "No," Vran said firmly. "You will stand behind the heir as guardian only. The Emperor has made it clear that while your presence is required, your voice is not." There was something in Vran's tone that caught Lauren's attention. Over the months, the stern sentinel had maintained his formal demeanor, but she had detected subtle shifts in his attitude toward her. Initially cold and suspicious, he now seemed almost protective. "You disapprove of my influence on the heir," Lauren stated, not a question. Vran's eyes shifted to a dark blue, contemplative. Lauren had learned. "What I approve or disapprove of is irrelevant, human. I serve the Emperor and the imperial bloodline. But if you could speak freely?" Vran was silent for a long moment. "Change comes at a cost. Always. Some in the court believe that cost will be too high. And you?" "I have guarded 3 generations of the imperial bloodline," Vran said quietly. "I have witnessed the strengths of our traditions and their limitations." His eyes met hers directly. "The heir has changed since your arrival. Whether for better or worse remains to be seen." It was the most personal statement Vran had ever made to her, and Lauren recognized it for the warning it was. The ceremony today would put both her and Lori under intense scrutiny. The Hall of 3 Moons was the largest ceremonial space in the palace, a vast chamber with 3 circular skylights positioned to capture the light of each of Vexoria's moons at specific times. Today, all 3 moons would be visible simultaneously, a rare alignment that happened only once every 7 years and was considered deeply auspicious in Zentari culture. Lauren stood slightly behind and to the right of Lori's ceremonial platform. The young heir was resplendent in formal attire, robes of iridescent material that shifted colors with each movement, and a headdress adorned with crystals that resembled the three moons in miniature. Despite the elaborate costume, Lauren could see the child's natural poise and confidence shining through. Emperor Szeth presided over the ceremony from his elevated position, his presence commanding even in silence. As tributaries and ambassadors from 27 worlds presented themselves, Lauren observed the subtle power dynamics at play. Some delegations approached with genuine reverence, others with carefully masked resentment, and still others with calculating assessment. The ceremony proceeded smoothly until the arrival of the Krell delegation. The Krell were a reptilian species known for their warrior culture and recent, reluctant submission to Zentari rule. Their ambassador, a massive-scaled being with impressive cranial spikes, approached the dais with barely concealed hostility. The Krell Dominion acknowledges the imperial heir, the ambassador stated, the translator device at his throat conveying his words in the formal Zentari language. But there was something in his tone that set Lauren on edge, a subtle inflection that the translation couldn't quite mask. Lauren noticed Lori stiffen slightly, golden eyes fixed on the Krell ambassador with unusual intensity. Then, to everyone's surprise, the young heir stepped forward and addressed the Krell directly. Ambassador Trell of the Krell Dominion, Lori said, using the ambassador's name though it hadn't been formally announced. Your people's strength is respected in the Empire. Tell me, how fares the eastern province of Krall since the drought season? A murmur ran through the assembled court. The question displayed detailed knowledge of Krell affairs that a child, even an imperial one, should not possess. The ambassador's scaled features registered shock before quickly composing themselves. The eastern province recovers slowly, Young Majesty, he replied cautiously. The drought was severe. Lori nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps the Empire's agricultural technologies might be shared more extensively with your people. I have studied reports suggesting Zentari irrigation systems could increase Krell crop yields by 40%. The ambassador blinked in surprise. Such assistance would be most welcome, Young Majesty. I will discuss this with the Emperor, Lori stated with simple authority. The strength of the Empire lies in the prosperity of all its worlds. As the Krell ambassador backed away, bowing much more deeply than when he had arrived, Lauren caught the Emperor's expression, a mixture of surprise and what appeared to be pride. This was not part of the scripted ceremony. Lori had just demonstrated not only knowledge but also political acumen far beyond their years. The rest of the ceremony continued without incident, but Lauren could feel the shifted energy in the room. The court advisors were exchanging glances, and several tributary ambassadors were reassessing the young heir with new interest. When the formal proceedings concluded, Lauren followed Lori and the Emperor to a private antechamber where the imperial family could rest before the evening banquet. As soon as the doors closed, the Emperor turned to his child. You have studied the Krell situation, he stated, his tone neutral, but his eyes a bright, inquisitive gold. Lori nodded. Lauren has been teaching me how humans approach diplomacy. They believe understanding the specific needs of other cultures creates stronger alliances than demanding submission. The Emperor's gaze shifted to Lauren. An interesting approach, and one that clearly made an impression on the Krell ambassador. The Krell value strength, Lauren offered carefully. But they also value those who recognize their struggles. Acknowledging both honors their culture while offering practical solutions. A human perspective, the Emperor noted, but without disapproval. And yet, potentially effective. He turned back to Lori. You showed initiative today, Heir. Initiative has not traditionally been encouraged in one so young. Is initiative not a quality an emperor should possess? Lori asked, with a directness that would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. To Lauren's surprise, the Emperor laughed, a sound she had never heard before. Indeed it is, my child. Indeed it is. As they prepared for the evening banquet, Lauren helped Lori change into slightly less formal attire. They were alone for a brief moment. the advisors having been dismissed to prepare for the evening's events. "You were impressive today," Lauren said quietly, adjusting the ceremonial collar around Laurie's shoulders. That was quick thinking with the Krell ambassador. Laurie's eyes shifted to a pleased violet. "I have been studying the tributary worlds in my private time." The Krell seemed angry, not respectful. "I wanted to understand why." "And the irrigation technology? Was that real?" "Of course," Laurie said, almost indignantly. "I would not offer false hope. I found the reports in the Imperial Archive. They were filed away as unnecessary expenditures by the Ministers of Resource Allocation." Lauren smiled, impressed by the child's thoroughness. "You're going to make quite an emperor someday." Laurie's expression grew serious. "A different kind of emperor." "Lauren, some in the court are not pleased with these changes." "I have heard the whispers." Lauren nodded soberly. "Change is always difficult, especially for those who benefit from the current system." "Are they right to be afraid?" Laurie asked, suddenly sounding very much like the child they were. "Am I destroying something precious by adopting human ideas?" Lauren knelt to meet Laurie's eyes directly. "You're not destroying, you're evolving. Taking the best of Zentari tradition and enhancing it with new perspectives. That's not destruction, it's growth." Laurie seemed to consider this deeply. "My father believes this too. But others?" The child's voice dropped to a whisper. "There are those who would rather see a traditional heir on the path to the throne." A chill ran through Lauren. "Has someone threatened you?" "Not directly, but I am observant." Laurie's golden eyes were solemn. "Lauren, if something happens to me, you must." The door slid open, revealing Sentinel Vran. "It is time for the banquet, Young Majesty." The warning in Laurie's eyes was clear, but there was no opportunity to discuss it further. Lauren followed them to the grand banquet hall, her senses now on high alert. The banquet was a dazzling affair, with exotic foods from across the empire presented in elaborate displays. Lauren had been positioned at a lower table, away from the imperial family, but with a clear view of Laurie. As the evening progressed, she observed the various court factions, trying to identify potential threats based on Laurie's warning. She noticed one advisor in particular, Minister Krov, responsible for imperial tradition and protocol, watching Laurie with barely disguised disapproval. Throughout the evening, he huddled in conversation with several other conservative court members, their eyes frequently darting toward the young heir. Halfway through the banquet, Lauren was startled by Sentinel Vran appearing silently beside her. "The Emperor requests your presence," he murmured. Discreetly, Vran led her through a servant's passage to a small strategy room adjacent to the banquet hall. The Emperor was waiting, alone, an unprecedented situation that immediately put Lauren on guard. "Your Majesty," she bowed slightly. "Is something wrong?" "Potentially," the Emperor said, his eyes a stormy gray. "I have received intelligence that certain elements within the court are displeased with my child's evolution. They believe human influence threatens the imperial legacy." Lauren tensed. Laurie mentioned something similar before the banquet. "The heir is perceptive," the Emperor nodded, "but perhaps not fully aware of the danger. These traditionalists believe that removing you would return the heir to proper Zentari ways." "Are you asking me to step back from my role?" Lauren asked, her heart sinking. "Quite the opposite." The Emperor's eyes shifted to that now familiar lavender. "I am asking you to protect my child more vigilantly than ever. These next few days are critical. The planetary alignment makes this a traditional time for succession challenges." Lauren felt cold. "You mean assassination attempts?" "It has been 3 centuries since an heir was successfully eliminated," the Emperor said calmly. "But the tradition remains part of our history. During the alignment of the 3 moons, any challenge to the succession must be acknowledged according to ancient law." "That's barbaric," Lauren blurted, then immediately regretted her directness. But the Emperor merely inclined his head. "Perhaps. It is also Zentari. Not all of our traditions deserve preservation, Lauren Bennett. This is precisely why my child needs a different perspective." He moved toward the door. "Return to the banquet. Stay close to the heir. Trust no one but Sentinel Vran and myself." As Lauren re-entered the banquet hall, She noticed immediately that something had changed. The atmosphere seemed charged, tense, and Lori was no longer at the Imperial table. Fighting panic, Lauren scanned the room until she spotted the young heir near a display of bioluminescent flowers, deep in conversation with a Zentari noble she didn't recognize. Lauren moved quickly through the crowd, positioning herself within earshot. A private viewing of the ancient artifacts, the noble was saying. A rare honor, young majesty, available only during the alignment. Your father approved the request earlier today. Lauren's instincts screamed warning. She approached smoothly, bowing to both Lori and the noble. Forgive the interruption, young majesty, but the emperor has requested your presence regarding the Krell irrigation initiative discussed earlier. The noble's eyes flashed an irritated orange. Surely that can wait, human. The alignment viewing is time-sensitive. Lori looked between them, clearly detecting Lauren's concern. Perhaps both can be accommodated. Lauren, you will accompany us to this viewing, and afterward, we will address my father's request. The noble couldn't object without appearing suspicious, but his displeasure was evident. As you wish, young majesty. The viewing chamber is this way. As they followed the noble out of the banquet hall, Lauren managed to catch Vran's eye across the room. She gave a subtle head tilt toward the exit they were taking. The sentinel's expression didn't change, but he immediately began moving in their direction. The noble led them down a corridor Lauren hadn't seen before, deeper into the ancient sections of the palace. The architecture here was different, more angular, with inscriptions in an older form of the Zentari language covering the walls. The alignment chamber is just ahead, the noble explained. It contains artifacts from the founding of the empire, viewable only during the triple alignment. They reached a heavy door made of some dark metal. The noble pressed his palm to a recognition panel, and the door slid open with a deep, resonant sound. After you, young majesty. Lauren's hand moved to Lori's shoulder, a gesture that would once have been shocking but had become accepted as part of her guardian role. Perhaps I should enter first, to ensure the chamber is properly prepared. The noble's eyes narrowed. That would be against protocol. The imperial bloodline always enters sacred spaces first. Lori looked up at Lauren, those golden eyes communicating silent understanding. In this case, we will create a new protocol. Lauren will enter first. Before the noble could object further, Lauren stepped through the doorway and immediately sensed the trap. The chamber beyond was small and bare, with no artifacts visible. And waiting inside were three robed figures, one holding what appeared to be a ceremonial dagger. Lauren reacted instantly, pushing back against Lori while shouting, "Run!" She launched herself at the nearest attacker, using her body to block the doorway and prevent them from reaching the young heir. The element of surprise gave her a momentary advantage. She landed a solid blow on one attacker, sending them staggering back. But she was outnumbered, and the second attacker caught her with a powerful strike to her midsection that knocked the wind from her lungs. As she fought to regain her breath, she heard the noble behind her say smoothly, "The human interference ends now. The empire will return to tradition." Lauren struggled to her feet, positioning herself between the attackers and the doorway where Lori would be. "You'll have to kill me first," she gasped. "That was always the plan," the noble replied coldly. The attackers advanced, but before they could reach her, the chamber was suddenly flooded with brilliant light. Lauren squinted against the glare to see Sentinel Vran filling the doorway, his weapon drawn. Behind him stood the Emperor himself, his eyes a furious red gold. Treason. The Emperor's voice resonated with authority. During the sacred alignment, against the imperial bloodline, the would-be assassins froze, then dropped to their knees. The noble attempted to speak. "Imperial Majesty, we sought only to preserve." "Silence," the Emperor commanded. "You have violated the most sacred trust. The penalty is known to all." Lauren sagged against the wall, relief flooding through her as palace guards streamed into the chamber to secure the conspirators. But her relief turned to concern when she realized Lori was nowhere to be seen. "The heir," she gasped, looking to Vran. "Safe." the sentinel assured her. I intercepted the young majesty in the corridor and secured them in a protected chamber. The emperor approached Lauren, studying her with those penetrating golden eyes. You placed yourself between danger and my child without hesitation. Of course, Lauren said simply, still trying to catch her breath. That's my job. No, the emperor corrected. That is loyalty beyond duty. A human trait I have come to value. He turned to the guards. Take the traitors to the justice chamber. Their judgment will be witnessed by all. As the conspirators were led away, Lauren was escorted to a medical chamber where her injuries, bruised ribs, and a cut along her arm she hadn't even noticed, were treated. She was anxious to see Lori, to confirm for herself that the child was unharmed. Her wish was granted sooner than expected. The door to the medical chamber slid open, and Lori rushed in, followed by Vran, who remained respectfully at the entrance. Lauren, the young heir's eyes were a worried blue. You're injured. Just a few bruises, Lauren assured them with a smile. Nothing serious. Lori approached the medical bed, golden eyes scanning Lauren's bandaged arm. Then, to Lauren's surprise, the child reached out and took her hand, an unprecedented action in public, even now. You protected me, Lori said softly. You were willing to sacrifice yourself. That's what humans do for those we care about, Lauren replied simply. Lori's eyes shifted through several colors before settling on that same lavender shade Lauren had seen in the Emperor's eyes. Then I am fortunate to have a human guardian. The child squeezed her hand gently. When I am Emperor, things will be different. Not just Centauri, not just human, but something new, something better. Lauren felt a swell of emotion. In that moment, looking at this remarkable child who bridged two worlds, she believed it was possible. The aftermath of the assassination attempt brought swift and dramatic changes to the imperial court. The conspirators were dealt with according to Centauri justice, a process Lauren chose not to witness. Minister Krav and several other traditionalist advisors were removed from their positions, replaced by younger, more progressive Centauri who showed interest in diplomatic approaches to governance. Most significantly, the Emperor announced that the heir would now be formally addressed by their chosen name, Lori, in all official capacities. It was a revolutionary break from tradition that sent shockwaves through Centauri society. 6 months after the market incident that had changed everything, Lauren stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, watching the triple moonset that marked the end of the alignment period. The door behind her slid open, and she turned to see the Emperor join her. The Earth Embassy has been inquiring about your status, he said without preamble. They wish to know when their diplomat will be returned. Lauren felt a twinge of homesickness at the mention of Earth, but also a deeper pull toward her responsibilities here. What did you tell them? That depends on you, the Emperor replied. Your original sentence of service has been fulfilled. You are free to return to your people if you wish. Lauren looked out at the alien city that had become familiar, thinking of the child who had changed her life as much as she had changed theirs. And if I wish to stay, then you would be formally appointed as Imperial Guardian to Lori, with all the rights and privileges of a high court official. The Emperor's eyes were unreadable. It would be a lifetime appointment. A lifetime on an alien world, far from Earth and everything familiar. Yet Lauren realized the decision had already been made in her heart. I would be honored to continue serving Lori and the Empire, she said. The Emperor nodded, something like satisfaction in his expression. Good. Lori has much still to learn from you. And perhaps, his eyes shifted to that now familiar lavender. Perhaps there is still much the Centauri can learn from humanity as well. As the last light of the 3 moons faded from the sky, Lauren felt a sense of peace settle over her. One simple act of compassion, a hug for a distressed child, had created ripples that would transform an empire. It was proof of something she had always believed, that the connections between beings, regardless of their origins or differences, were the true foundation of any civilization worth building. And in that moment, on a world light years from Earth, humanity's greatest strength had found its place among the stars. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, Don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.